Grow Great is a city government leadership podcast with Lisa Norris and me, Randy Cantrell. Each week we share insights, experiences, and wisdom to help you and your leadership grow great. Our website is growgreat.com.
So much in our roles every day, it's easy to focus on just tasks. We've talked about this before, getting the job done, looking at what you have in the day, getting stuff marked off the list. I remember as a director early in our days, I told Randy, I said, man, he goes, how would you describe yourself, or something to that effect? And I said, I'm a taskmaster. And he listened, and if you're looking at him, he just had the same smile and the little smirk that he had back then. And it was a healthy one, but I looked at him, I said, what? And he goes, never utter those words from your mouth again.
Well, to be fair, I asked her, first I asked you, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
And so she described herself as being a person that really likes this to-do list. And I said,
and to get things done, right? I believe I get things done for people that they need.
And I said, that's not what most people think of. They're not using that phrase that way. They're thinking taskmaster as in mush, you're just beating people over the head to get something done. And I could tell, I mean, this was early on.
Yeah, it was very early.
I could tell, she sure doesn't come across like a person like that. So the smirk was me just being completely confused by the phrase and then what she really meant. And when she said, no, it's to-do list, then I uttered my, and I don't often do that, but I do remember being quite forceful about that.
You were. And of course I laughed, and this was early, and it just tells you not only Randy serving me, right? This is about great coaching. It's so important because you told me to lean into who I was, but again, you sought understanding, and you helped me understand that the way I was describing myself can actually lead to a different impression than the leadership style I actually have. So I thought that was wise, and it did help me tell a different story, as I was trying to become better. But I say that because a taskmaster is not a bad thing. Getting things done is not a bad thing. But as leaders and we evolve, I think it's so important that you have to focus on strategy, take yourself up a notch, and not just look at what you need to get done, but how you need to influence and impact your team. That's what's critical as an effective leader. So you can be a taskmaster and you can be good at being a taskmaster and getting things done. But to me, that's managing and not leading. You're managing the project, you're managing the task, you're making sure stuff is getting on and off the list. What is so much more critical is the influence you are having on others to go from you getting things done to helping them become better leaders. That's really what our goal and effort should focus around. And as you talk about strategy, I think so many leaders, and I've worked with a lot of them, it's unintentional. I believe that in their hearts, they want to be strategic, but all they know is the more I get stuff done, the more I'll be recognized to get the next promotion. I'll become an expert in getting stuff done. I would tell you, for those that are the get-or-dones kind of people, that is critical, but that is a fraction and a small fraction of what makes an effective leader. If you want to truly up your game and become a better leader, think about the strategy to make your people, better humans, better leaders, better productive and growth-oriented individuals. Because influence is really what a leader should be focused on first. And Randy and I talked about a quote that I had seen that really brings this to a point. And it says, basically on strategy is important, but execution is everything. incredibly successful people focus on executing incredibly well. And then we'll post that on the website. It was by Jeff Hayden. I'm not sure, who he is, but again, it was such a strong message how important strategy is. But it's not just the strategy itself. It's not that you can see it as a leader, but it's how you actually roll it out and execute that vision. And that's really hard, Randy. I don't know if you found that as CEO, but when I've been leading individuals, especially, I did HR for 27 years, and now I'm a managing director, like an ACM type role. That is something that's hard for individuals. Most people I have found that are promoted because of their expertise in their industry. I'm sure I was, I became an expert and in HR, and they wanted to promote me from manager to director. But that's not what made me successful, is the expertise. Because as a leader, my goal was to pass on that expertise and wisdom to those beneath me so that they could be influenced and grow to become what they want to be. And it's me helping them get there. We would have strategy sessions, and I think this is key. And I think any of my leaders that I have now that are director level they're starting to see this. I've been enrolled since October, and they're starting to see, I press them to not just get the things done, but the phrases I'll ask are, what are you doing to help your leaders get that done, to help your leaders know how to lead? And those conversations are not difficult or challenging. I just don't think they're front of mind. The strategy side is not there. And we really want to influence that and have strategy sessions with our people to help them not only see what your vision is, but see what their role and their part is in that vision and mission to get things done. Because people really want to just have a purpose. They want to know their value to the organization. They want to have a purpose. And if they know what that is and you've communicated it and you rely upon that, it makes them become better and hopefully perform better because they're actively wanting to grow. Strategy is critical.
I think one of the challenges, and it may be the challenge, in my experience, it seems to be, in working with people, micro gets us the opportunity to play at the macro level. So I've learned that city government folks can be really fond of, and they use this in a negative sense as well, they should, of this person, they're too in the weeds.
Yes.
Translation, they're down into the nitty gritty details of this thing. And
they're still trying to be the technical expert.
Yeah, and now that they're at a director level or above, I don't need them to be in the weeds. The problem is, it's that being in the weeds. We get our opportunities because we're weed experts. Mm-hmm. Until suddenly we're not weed experts, and navigating that transition seems to me to be the game. And some people, like you, some people can navigate it and navigate it well and quickly, and other people can really struggle, and some other people, they just fail. They just can't get out of the weeds because it's that classic case of, what got you here won't get you there. Mm-hmm. But we think it will until it doesn't, right? I mean, a lot of things can work until they stop working. And when they stop working and we're puzzled and we're like, well, wait a minute, this always worked and now this isn't working. So you take Lisa. So Lisa goes from working in an HR department to being the director. And with every move, and now being a managing director, with every move, less and less and less and less in the weeds. Her role today really doesn't have much of anything to do with being an HR expert, which she is. Hugely beneficial, I would argue. And that may be partly because HR is a real tip of the spear kind of a art and science. But that's not what she's doing today. She's not in the weeds of HR. She's got a replacement in that department who happened to be a protege of hers, which is hugely beneficial, I think, for her and for this person and for the organization. But yeah, it's going from micro to macro, and strategy is macro.
That's
It,
right.
it it just is, and I think that's a challenge for people.
Well, and it's as you think about strategy as a leader, we've really got to, you've got to
Put a
step back.
definition to that. How do you think about, if you had to define that for our audience, how would you define strategy? You kind of sort of did earlier when you talked about purpose and whatnot, but
Yeah, it's understanding. Let me think about how to phrase that. It's probably close to um, identifying where we are and where we need to go and how to get there. To
yep,
me, that is overall strategy. That means you're not the one doing it. Now, I understand. I know in our city, very busy. We've talked about this. I probably no different than any of the cities out there or individuals. Even if you're not with the city, we've got a lot of non-city individuals listening to our podcast because it's really about leadership generally.
yep.
But how many of us? It's just about leading, and you have the experts, but really strategy is stepping back and not being the doer. Sometimes you do have to do, and I get that. I did the same thing, and I had to do many things. That's fine. But overarching, your group wants to have purpose and a mission and a vision so they know where they are, where they're going, and how they're going to get there, period. They have to know those things. And if you know it, but you're not communicating it, then
What
it's
good
like
is it?
yeah, it's like a troop. I know Randy and I had a discussion. If the general says take the hill, but you don't know why you're taking the hill or when you're going to take the hill, what good is it? You need to know we're going to take the hill, and here's why. And people are going to be much more engaged in that. People are going to be much more engaged if they understand the why and how they're going to get there, and then they trust you as a leader. If you gain trust as a leader through strategy and through demonstration, we talked about the quote, executing it incredibly well, they will follow you into war willingly and have your back. And that's what defines a truly high performing team. They may not understand the danger before them, but if you are a great leader and execute well, they will follow you full 100% in every time. And that's the people, those are the troops that you want. And then out of those rise up your future leaders. But you have to see it and you have to demonstrate it, because not only in your strategy and your execution of that strategy well, guess what they're going to do? Follow the leader. They start following those practices because you're going to be pushing them down naturally, and they're going to start executing those as well. And you need to watch them and help them do those same things, not in your way, but in your purpose. There's a lot of different ways to execute that fit and lean into that individual style. But just the fact that they have the strategy and the understanding of how to execute it well so that the troops will follow is critical, because I've seen really good strategic people that have absolutely no ability to execute it, which doesn't create any future leaders, nor does it create followers. Their troops go to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And that's not what you want. You've got to watch it and make sure it's executed incredibly well. And I think as leaders, we must focus on that, is the execution, not just the strategy itself.
As you're trying to lead directors now in this relatively new role that you're in, so what are you finding the challenges to be when it comes to strategy?
Well, again, I've got a great team. The hearts are all good. They have a good idea of what they want to do. Sometimes it's on how to do it. And so it's not that they lack knowledge. I think they lack experience in it. Like so many people, they are really great experts at what they do. And my job is just to help them see through the storm, through their trial and tribulation they're facing right now, and ask questions to help them find their way. I'm not here to tell them how to do it, but I am here to give them the resources and tools they need to execute that strategy well.
And this
And
is one of
each
those
person,
things you have to learn by doing it.
that's right. And not only that, I have to remember they are in a place I was.
Yeah.
And the people that help me, I want to do that same thing for them. I'm not an expert. This is a great example. I am not an expert in the airport. I'm not an expert in fleet and facility services. I don't know the smallest thing about it. But what I execute with them, and I'm working with one director now, and we get along really well. I believe. I think he would say the same thing. But one of the things we talk about is I'm not an expert. I'm not here to micromanage you. But when we're doing this project, here's what I'm hoping to achieve to make sure it aligns with what he's hoping to achieve. And then we start talking about, okay, how do we get there? How do we get there? And he'll give input and insight. And I'm like, okay, I like that. What about what about this piece? Am I understanding that correctly? And he'll go, well, that won't work because of this. As you start lining those things out, you want to have dialogue because he is the expert and I have to rely upon that. Where in my past as a director, I was the expert sharing wisdom, right? I always believe, and we've talked about that you can serve up, and he's doing that for me. He is serving me by educating and informing me. And then he's relying upon me for areas I'm not an expert, but I have ideas on how to improve that particular problem from a leadership perspective. And it's so important. He and I just talk about here's what I'd like to see and why. I talked a lot about the why. And he said that's exactly what my former leader was trying to achieve. So here's what we've done over the last year. And so through that relationship, not only are we learning each other, but I am seeing he's got a strategy. I'm just here to help him execute it well. And listen, I'm not afraid. We've talked together and I said, listen, my job is to make you and your team look great. Your job is to help me look great. Right? I want your team to trust you, and I believe that they do, but let's up the ante a little bit. And so he understands I've got his best interest at heart, and I truly believe he's got mine. And I'm experiencing this with my other leaders, but that's just an example of the role shifted for me, but the strategy didn't shift. It's just different.
Yeah.
I've got a different strategy now.
What tips do you have for people? Because you'll often hear number ones being defined as the CEO or the city manager, person in the top chair. I need this person to be more strategic. This person they're not strategic enough in this department. So for us to become more strategic, and I'll define that as being a leader who can formulate and ideally articulate the meaning of that to the troops, for lack of a better phrase. What tips have you got that can help somebody who's all my success is because I was in the weeds. All my success is because I'm a weed expert. And now I'm no longer in a role where I can even be a weed expert. Got any tips or advice?
Well, number one, you need to sit back and identify your strategy. You have to live in the day to day, but each day to day must serve a greater purpose. So, number one, define what is it that your team needs to work on that you know is the top priority, and you can see it. It could be the people issue, it could be a project issue, it could be I don't know, a personnel issue. But define what your strategy is, where you are, where you want to go, how you're going to get there. So you need to lay that out. That's number one. The second biggest failure that I see is in communication. Anytime I work with any group, communication is the top issue, whether it's not enough, how it's delivered, etc. So once you identify your strategy, and by the way, you don't have to do that alone. I would tell you need to include your leadership team. Is you need to know where you want to go and where you are and how you're going to get there. But then you need to talk with your leadership team and say, this is what I'm seeing as our top three issues, whatever the case is. Get them involved. They may tweak it, make sure they agree, because you want to get your leadership team on board. That's second. Communicate it so now your leadership team knows it. The next thing is communicate it to your entire team. This is where we want to go. These are our top three strategies. And I'm a big believer in handing it to them. You set the goals of how we're going to get there, not you as a leader. Let your team set the goals on how they're going to get there, not 50 of them, like the top 3 things they're going to work on. And I always use SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, timely. You can find those all over the internet. There's templates you could do, but it basically says what you're going to do, by when, how, and ultimately it's measurable. So it's something that they can achieve and that's reasonable. If you set those goals and let your team do it, you're going to get buy-in as a leader. So basically on those, and then you must follow through on that strategy. You must get with your team, check in, inspect what you expect, know what they're doing and what they say they did. It needs to be measurable. Make sure they did it and can demonstrate it. With those kind of things at play, that's how you track it. Because honestly, guys, strategy never ends. Strategy is different every time. And you have to continue to stay at the top, see the vision for your entire, like we talked about, taking the hill. What is the hill in that moment? How are we going to get through it? And what is their purpose and value? You get those things knocked out and you'll be well on your way to strategy and executing it well.
Thanks for watching and listening to Grow Great, a city government leadership podcast. For Lisa Norris, I'm Randy Cantrell. Be well, do good, grow great. The website is growgreat.com.